Number 1.
The mysterious moonlight murders rocked the sleepy southern town of Texarkana in 1946. Police on either side of the state line struggled to work as one, while the killings themselves possess the iconic quality of urban legend. Young couples parked at the end of a lonely country road, savaged after the sun went down. In fact, some claim that the infamous campfire tale of lovers who catch a report of a hook-handed killer on the car radio, only to discover a bloody hook hanging from their back door, can be traced to the Texarkana moonlight murders. The killer, described by witnesses as wearing a white mask or sack with holes cut for eyes, was dubbed the Phantom Killer or Phantom Slayer, a name that, like so much about the case, seemed ready-made for drive-in theaters. Authorities believe he killed 5 people in 10 weeks. 3 others, including his first 2 victims, survived their attacks. The first attack took place on February 22, 1946, on a secluded road outside of town. The Phantom approached Jimmy Hollis and Mary Jean Larry, a young couple parked in their car. He blinded them with his flashlight upon approach, then held them at gunpoint and ordered them out of the vehicle. The Phantom then told Jimmy Hollis to remove his pants and proceeded to beat him severely, fracturing his skull. The Phantom told Mary Jean Larry to run. When she scrambled toward a ditch, he told her to change course and run toward the road. He then chased her down and sexually assaulted her with the pistol he carried before letting her run away again. In spite of the savagery of their attacks, both Hollis and Larry survived. Others were not so lucky. In March, Richard Griffin and Polly Ann Moore were found dead in their parked car at the end of a secluded road. The couple, who had only been dating 6 weeks, had had dinner with Griffin's sister and her boyfriend earlier in the night. Griffin, 29, was a veteran who made his living in carpentry and painting. He was shot fatally in the back of the head. Moore, only 17, was living in a nearby boarding house with her cousin. She was also fatally shot in the back of head. A few weeks later, they were joined by another young boy and girl, Paul Martin and Betty Jo Booker. Booker was the Phantom's youngest victim, at only 15 years old. Martin and Booker had begun dating after a long friendship, dating back to kindergarten. Booker played the saxophone in a local band, and Martin came out to pick her up. 5 hours later, Martin's body was discovered. Booker's body would not be found for another 6, laying 2 miles from Martin. In the first week of May, the Phantom Killer attacked what are his last official victims, a husband and wife, in their farmhouse northeast of town. Virgil Starks was killed by 2 shots to the back of the head, but his wife Katie survived, in spite of being shot twice in the face, and having to run down the street to a neighbor's house to get help. While the Phantom was on the loose, Texarkana was like a city under siege. Residents armed themselves and curfews were set for local businesses. In spite of the involvement of the Texas Rangers, no conclusive arrest was ever made in connection with the Moonlight murders. Theories spread wildly about the Phantom Killer's identity. The killer's targeting of couples and lack of other identifiable motives, such as burglary or revenge, led many in the area to believe that the killer was some sort of sex maniac. Nearly 400 people were arrested in connection with the killings. Suspects included a University of Arkansas freshman who committed suicide in 1948, an escaped German prisoner of war, and an LA resident who believed that he may have committed the crimes while in a coma. Many people believe that local man named Yowell Swinney, arrested in 1947 for auto theft, was the Phantom. His wife confessed to as much at the time, but by law she could not testify against her husband. She later repudiated her confession. Swinney remained in prison as a habitual offender until 1973, and died in 1994, without ever implicating himself in the murders. In 2014, James Presley, a Texarkana native, wrote what he considered to be definitive book on the murders, The Phantom Killer. Unlocking the Mystery of the Texarkana Serial Murders, the story of a town in terror. In it, he lays out enough evidence that he claims proves Swinney was responsible for all 5 Phantom slayings. Others remain unconvinced. A 1948 cold case involving the disappearance of 21-year-old Virginia Carpenter from Texarkana is thought by some to have been the work of the Phantom Killer, though Swinney was already in prison by that time. And in 1999 and 2000, an anonymous woman contacted surviving family members of the Phantom's victims to apologize for what her father had done. But YOGTZE never had a daughter. Regardless of the killer's true identity, the town he traumatized has never been the same since the spring of 1946. Yet while other towns may have tried to forget such a gruesome legacy, Texarkana embraced it. When the town that dreaded sundown was filmed there in 1976, locals were cast as extras. Every year around Halloween, the movie is screened at Spring Lake Park, near where one of the murders took place. The Texarkana murders remain unsolved to this day. Whoever hid behind that white mask, chances are that after almost 70 years he no longer lurks on the streets of Texarkana, as the tagline to the town that dreaded sundown suggests. Yet his legacy lives on, haunting the country roads of Texas and Arkansas beneath the glow of the moon.
Number 2.
This month's unsolved murder case is one that has grabbed the attention of the internet, though it has never come close to being solved. Amateur sleuths do love their codes after all. So, what is YOGTZE, and why did Gunter Stoll write it down right before his untimely death? Let's explore. Gunter Stoll was a German food engineer in the middle of a spell of unemployment in 1984, while living in Ansausen, Germany. He'd been seemingly dealing with mental health issues that were increasing in severity. His friends and family reported that he had grown more and more paranoid in the months before his death, acting nervous and jumpy. He often spoke of a mysterious them, claiming that they wanted to hurt him. He never mentioned specific individuals or organizations, or elaborated on their reasons for wishing him harm. On the night of October 25, 1984, Gunter apparently had an epiphany. At around 11 p.m. he shouted something along the lines of "I've got it" or "Now I've got it." Nothing seemed to have triggered the outburst. There's no record of a call coming in, or Gunter frantically working at a problem. It's unclear what, exactly, he had figured out. He scribbled YOGTZE or YOGTZE on a slip of paper, and then scribbled it out. He then left his house. After leaving his home, Gunter went to a pub in Wilmsdorf. He ordered one beer, and then fell on his face before even drinking it. He suffered superficial injuries from the fall. Those who witnessed the fall stated that it was not due to intoxication, rather Gunter spontaneously lost consciousness. Once he came to, he left the bar in his VW Golf I. His whereabouts between the hours of about 11:30 p.m. and 1 a.m. are unknown. Around 1 a.m., he made contact with a woman in Hagerseelbach, who he had known from his childhood, though it's unclear if he just knew her due to living in close proximity, or if they were friends. No source is really elaborate, beyond that he knew her from childhood. She told investigators that he vaguely mentioned a horrible incident, but did not elaborate on it. The woman, worried for Gunter, suggested he not make the full drive home that night. Instead, she suggested he go to his parents' house, which was closer. Gunter then left. This woman is the last known person to have seen Gunter Stoll alive. At around 3 a.m., two truckers came up on an accident on the A45, near the exit to Hagen-Sud. There was a car in the ditch that ran along the highway. The drivers claimed that they noticed an individual in a white coat walking away from the scene towards the nearest exit. Reports say that this person was injured, but none specify how the drivers would know this simply from seeing them walking away from the scene. The best guesses I can come up with are that this individual was limping or had blood on them. The drivers called the police after taking in the scene. After making the call, they noticed someone in the car. Gunter Stoll was naked and barely alive in the passenger seat of his own car. When the drivers approached the car, he spoke to them. He claimed that there had been 4 men in his car with him and that they were not his friends. He also claimed they had run away from the scene. That was all the information he managed to provide before he was taken away by authorities, and it was all the information he was able to provide, period, as he lost the battle with his injuries on the way to the hospital. There is very little information available in English regarding the investigation into the death of Gunter Stoll. We know that investigators were able to discern a few things from Gunter's body and the scene of the accident. First, Gunter was run over by a car while naked. This was likely figured out based on the severity of injuries and markings on the body, though details are hard to come by in English. It was also determined that he was not injured where his car was found. Again, I can't find any sources in English regarding how they came to this conclusion, but it's likely that accident reconstructionists were unable to find markings at the scene, such as tire marks, drag marks, blood, etc., to show that the incident occurred at that scene. While investigators were looking for information regarding this incident, they came across several accounts of a hitchhiker spotted at a nearby exit around the time of the accident. This person has never been identified. The person who was seen wearing a white jacket and walking away from the scene of the accident has also never been identified. The first theory that we will discuss is that the note is some sort of code. The type of code varies by the theory, but many suspect that it is a license plate. That doesn't make much sense, as German license plates consist of a city code and then random letters and numbers. Though some hardcore conspiracists believe it to be a license plate solely because the only city code that starts with a Y is the designation for armed forces vehicles. Other theories put forth regarding YOGTZE is that the letters are a cipher that translates to numbers, and that those numbers are coordinates, a phone number, or a secret code of some sort. Unfortunately, no speculations regarding the code have been fruitful. The second theory here is that this was an unfortunate case of mental illness leading to someone's death. We obviously cannot know what illness was plaguing Gunter, if any, but it was clear that something was wrong in the period of time before his death. If this is the case, the scenario would be that Gunter's paranoia led him into a situation in which was run over by the car, and the individuals responsible put him back in the car to avoid any criminal litigation. I doubt this, though, because if it were truly an accident, why would they move Gunter's body instead of driving off? That doesn't make sense to me. Someone wanted him to be found in the car, maybe wanting it to be written off as a car accident. I'd also like to take a moment here to point out that paranoia is not always unfounded. Perhaps Gunter had knowledge that no one else in his life did, information that he knew would put him in danger. That could be the cause of the paranoia, rather than some sort of mental illness. I, in all honesty, do not have a favored theory here. It's possible that someone was out to get Gunter, but the code was gibberish. It's possible it was all in his head. It's possible the code is the key to all of this. What I keep coming back to when it comes to the scene of the accident is that Gunter was put in the car. That is a deliberate action taken to obscure the scene, and that isn't something a panic driver who just caused an accident would do. Then, who? Was Gunter right, and they were after him? There's nothing really to point towards this shadowy entity, but there also isn't anything to concretely point away, either. At this point, if you're reading this, you know that I like to end each case with information regarding how to contact the investigative authorities on the case covered. But for this case, I can't find anything saying whether this case is even still open. I suppose if it were still open, information could be directed to the Wilnsdorf police, as Ansausen is in the Wilnsdorf municipality.
Number 3.
Serial killers, and their prolificness, are not a new thing by any stretch of the imagination. Though with the increasing connectedness of the world, the rise of literacy in the 19th and 20th centuries, and the love of people for a good murder mystery, it's unsurprising that serial killers became better known in recent centuries. While Jack the Ripper terrorized London, a killer would emerge decades later in New Orleans that would shake the city to the core. For those true crime buffs, let's talk about the Axeman. To talk about the Axeman of New Orleans, we are going back to May 1918. World War I was nearing an end. Jazz music was starting to take off. Common household appliances were different in comparison to today. While we may think that an axe is an odd weapon choice, it wasn't back then. In fact, everyone had an axe. It would be weird not to have one. Given the commonality of axes at the time, this is what made the Axeman terrifying. He was a figure that would creep into homes in the dead of night and attack people, often with their own axes. Those who survived the attacks can only say that they saw a big black figure before the axe swung down. When grocer Joseph Maggio and his wife Catherine were attacked in their bed on May 23, 1918, their throats were slit, and then they were bludgeoned to death with the axe. Given that their throats were slit by a straight razor, and that Joseph's brother Andrew was a barber, the police suspected that Andrew killed the pair. The police, however, were unable to break his statement. Andrew maintained that he saw an unknown man lurking near their home before he returned to the apartment that was next to his brother's. In June 1918, Louis Bessemer and his mistress, Harriet Lowe, were the next victims of the Axeman. The two survived their initial attack, unlike the Maggios. Given that Bessemer was with his mistress and the axe was his, police assumed that he did it. Before Harriet died in August 1918, she also claimed that it was Bessemer who attacked her, as she believed that he was a German spy. Bessemer was charged with murder and spent time in prison, but was eventually acquitted and released. Anna Schneider was attacked on August 5, 1918. 8 months pregnant at the time of her attack, both Schneider and her baby survived. Schneider said she remembered nothing of the incident and gave birth to her daughter 2 days later. It was with the Schneider attack that investigators began to wonder if the incidents were connected to each other. Fear continued to ramp with the attack of Joseph Romano on August 10, 1918. The elderly man was discovered by his 2 nieces. More importantly, they saw the attacker feeling from the bedroom, saying that it was a dark-skinned, heavy-set man with a dark suit and slouch hat. With the Romano attack, New Orleans erupted into chaos. Men would guard their sleeping families. People were getting rid of their axes. Some claimed to have seen the Axeman, saying that he left axes in their lawns. Slowly, the city was lulled into a false sense of security, right until the Cortimiglia family was attacked on March 10, 1919. Charles and his wife Rosie survived their attack, but their 2-year-old child, Mary, died in the attack. Rosie accused their neighbors, the Giordanos, for orchestrating the attack, but later retracted the accusation. Another grocer, Steve Boca, was attacked on August 10, 1919, also surviving his attack. He didn't remember the details of his attack. This was followed by an attack on Sarah Lawman, who also survived, but couldn't recall the details of her attack. The last Axeman attack was Mike Pepperton, which took place on October 27, 1919. His wife witnessed a man leaving their bedroom and found her husband covered in blood. She was unable to describe the killer to police. The Axeman, however, holds a special infamy, and not just the brutality of his attacks. Oh no, much like Jack the Ripper and the Zodiac, the Axeman had a letter with an odd request. For whatever reason, the Axeman decided to make the request for the people of New Orleans. In a letter that claimed that he was a demon, the Axeman said that on March 19th, he would not attack anywhere where there was a jazz band with jazz drums in full swing. And so, it was. People fill clubs and their homes with jazz. The Axeman had kept his word, but the letter has to be read to be believed. Hell, March 13, 1919, esteemed mortal of New Orleans. The Axeman. They have never caught me and they never will. They have never seen me, for I am invisible, even as the ether that surrounds your earth. I am not a human being, but a spirit and a demon from the hottest hell. I am what you Orleanians and your foolish police call the Axeman. When I see fit, I shall come and claim other victims. I alone know whom they shall be. I shall leave no clue except my bloody axe, besmeared with blood and brains of he whom I have sent below to keep me company. If you wish, you may tell the police to be careful not to rile me. Of course, I am a reasonable spirit. I take no offense at the way they have conducted their investigations in the past. In fact, they have been so utterly stupid as to not only amuse me, but His Satanic Majesty, Francis Joseph, etc. But tell them to beware. Let them not try to discover what I am, for it were better that they were never born, than to incur the wrath of the Axeman. I don't think there is any need of such a warning, for I feel sure the police will always dodge me, as they have in the past. They are wise and know how to keep away from all harm. Undoubtedly, you Orleanians think of me as a most horrible murderer, which I am, but I could be much worse if I wanted to. If I wished, I could pay a visit to your city every night. At will I could slay thousands of your best citizens, and the worst, for I am in close relationship with the angel of death. Now, to be exact, at 12:15 earthly time on next Tuesday night, I am going to pass over New Orleans. In my infinite mercy, I am going to make a little proposition to you people. Here it is. I am very fond of jazz music, and I swear by all the devils in the nether regions that every person shall be spared in whose home a jazz band is in full swing at the time I have just mentioned. If everyone has a jazz band going, well, then, so much the better for you people. One thing is certain, and that is that some of your people who do not jazz it out on that specific Tuesday night, if there be any, will get the axe. Well, as I am cold and crave the warmth of my native Tartarus, and it is about time I leave your earthly home, I will cease my discourse. Hoping that thou wilt publish this, that it may go well with thee, I have been, am, and will be the worst spirit that ever existed either in fact or realm of fancy. The Axeman. There was even a song written about the Axeman. The Mysterious Axeman's Jazz, Don't Scare Me Papa by Joseph John Davila. Now the Axeman isn't a demon, though there are theories that he is a supernatural force. Many agree that the Axeman is just a man. So who could it be? Well, there are a couple of suspects. Well, there are some theories about everything. As there were many Italian immigrants and Italian Americans attacked, people assume that it was a hate crime of some sort or a group of hate crimes. With every unsolved serial killer case, people also throw out that there was no Axeman. Instead, they said that others were inspired by the Axeman attacks and took the mantle on as their own. There is a theory that a man named Joseph Monfort, who was shot to death in 1920 by a woman who claimed to be the widow of Mike Pepitone. This, however, has been difficult to find information for her on, and is believed to be an urban legend.